Again, welcome to our continuing TechBytes series. I'll be the moderator for today's webinar. Today's topic is going to be automating tasks with Excel macros, and it's going to be presented by Patty Dobbins, our CEO and partner of BNC Technology Services, who's done these before. Any of our past or current TechByte videos can be found on our website in case you miss anything, and that's www.bctechnologysrv.com. SRV standing for service. Questions. As we go through the webinar, if you have a question, you can go to your control panel, type in a question. I will receive it. I'll try to make a decision whether we should interrupt Patty at that point or save it to the end, and then we'll get to all the questions by the time the webinar is over. There is a handout today. If you go to your dashboard, there'll be a little box called handouts, and there's a Word doc that you can open. And at that, I think we're about ready to go. So I'm going to turn it over to Patty, and here we go with automating tasks with Excel.
Hey, welcome everyone, and thanks for taking your lunchtime here to join us, and hopefully you've got something good for lunch, a nice salad or maybe even a cheeseburger, right? so hope that that you're just taking this nice break out and finding some value in what we have to offer today with macros in Excel. What we're going to be going through today, kind of our agenda, is going to be recording macros. Obviously, that's going to be a big piece of it. And also showing some macro examples, just to kind of get your ideas flowing about how you might be able to use them. Also take a look at editing macros and what the VBA window looks like, and how you can share macros with each other, perhaps people in your department or in your organization, kind of collaborating on those important things that save you a little bit of time. We're also going to take a look at or talk about the security that surrounds that, because as you can imagine, it's really running code in the background. So we do want to be really careful about where we get code and how we share it, and just making sure that we're aware of the security around that. And then also just saving it in different ways to run macros, and any other questions that come up during that time. So before we get into our content for today, I do want to just throw out a little poll out there. And so that's going to be, have you, and if everyone could just jump in and vote, have you created macros in Excel before? And this just kind of gives me an indication of, how familiar you are in the environment, and, sort of how much we need to focus on certain aspects. So okay, I'm going to go ahead and close that poll and share that out. So you can see that, it's about half and half, a little bit more that have not. So perfect. And we're going to take a look at that, and I am just going to share out my screen here. All right, so should be able to see my Excel screen there. And what I want to do first is just run through an example of what a macro is, and how you might go about recording one. So a macro is really a recording of different steps that you may perform. So if it's something that you're doing on a regular basis frequently, it's a repetitive task, something that you have to do over and over, it may be a case to record a macro for that. And so if you think about, if we were going through and we were taking this and we were saying, okay, we want to format this line as a certain color, maybe green, or we want to format the total line as green, we want to put double underlines under here. We want to format this as numbers. And so it's a regular thing that we're going to do all of those things. We could record a macro, do all of those things in that macro, and then have a one-click process that we do instead of maybe the 20 clicks that it would take us to do all of that. We could just do it in one click. So that's kind of the power behind macros. And so let's start out with just doing something similar to what I was talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select this area here under monitors, because what I want to do is create a double underline here, and I want to do some special formatting. So I'm going to select that line, and I'm going to start recording of my macro. So there's a couple of places where I can do that. One is down here on the status bar, if you can see me there. And that is a little macro where you can start recording from. If you don't see that, you can right-click on that status area bar, and you can see these are all the options that you have to put there, and one of them is macro recording. So if it's not checked, you can check it there, and then that will show up there. And by far, very, very convenient and easy. You can also stop recording your macro when you're done from there. Then also up on the View tab, you can also see macros from here. And if I click on the drop-down arrow, you'll see that I have Record Macro from this place as well. Okay. So either way that you want to do it, I'm just going to use the one down here. And that's going to pop up my Record Macro dialog box. So here is where I start by putting in my macro name, and macros can't contain spaces and some special characters. So one of the things that we can do to kind of make it a little more understandable or visible as we're looking at it is to use what's called Camel Case. That's capitalizing the first letter of each word, and I'm sure you've seen that many times. Or we can also use the underscore character to separate the words, and that helps as well. So for this one, I'm going to call it double underline. And you can see that I'm using that capital there, so it kind of helps. And if I wanted to, I could also put in an underscore character, and that would kind of help me to be able to see very quickly what it is. The next option that we have is using a shortcut key. So if it's something that I use frequently, and I may be somebody who likes shortcuts, you may use like Control-C for copy, Control-V for paste. So if you're someone who likes shortcut keys, you could certainly do that. You can either use Control and a letter, or you can use Control-Shift and a letter. And that's what I'm going to just type in my Shift key here, and then I'm going to, actually, my Shift key is not responding, so I will just go ahead and type in a letter there. And then you'll see in the next one, the next box that we have is where we're going to store this. So is this going to be inside this workbook only? And for this purpose right now, that's what we're going to choose. But we'll also take a look later on at Personal Macro Workbook and what that's about. In our next box, we can type a description in here. So this may be, I'm going to color it green fill. So I'm just going to put in green fill and double accounting underline. So that's going to let me know what that macro is going to do. And from there, I'm going to say, okay. So right now, I am recording this macro. So you'll see that down on the status bar on the bottom next to ready, that it's telling me, it has the square there like the stop button. so when I'm done, I can click on that stop button, but it also lets me know that there is a macro being recorded right now. See, so whatever you do from this point on until you stop the recording, it's going to record all of those. So if I scroll down, if I click on cells, if I click on things on the ribbon, it's going to record all of those actions. So it may be something, especially if you're new to macros, you might want to go through that process first of what you're going to do in that macro, so that you're not getting extra keystrokes and things in there that you don't want. Just kind of helps to keep your macro clean and the code short. All right, so I have this selected. Now I'm going to go to my Home tab, and I'm going to fill this in with a light green color. And the next thing that I want to do is I'm going to open up my font dialog box here by clicking on the little box in the corner, the little arrow. And from the font tab, under underline, I'm going to select the double accounting underline. And you'll see that example of what it's going to do there for me. And then I'll say OK. All right. Now I'm just going to click off of those cells so I can see what it did there. And that's exactly what I wanted. So I am going to now stop my macro. So I'm going to go down and just click stop. Okay. So anything else that I want to, any other text or cells that I want to apply that formatting to, I can do that very simply by just running that macro, or by using that shortcut combination that I had of Control-D. So we're just going to give that a shot. Let's say that I wanted to apply it to these cells in this row. All right, so I'm just going to come in. I'm going to do Control-D, and you see that quickly I was able to make those changes. So it's especially helpful for things that don't show up right on the ribbon and for doing multiple tasks. So there were a couple of different formats there that I did. And I could also do this with many more. So it's really becomes a powerful tool. And I actually want to show you an example of what it can do, just to kind of get you maybe thinking a little bit outside of the box of formatting. There's a lot of other things that it can do. Basically, anything that you can record is going to record with a macro. So in this scenario that I'm looking at right now, let's say that each month I have a list, or have information that comes in from another application that I need to import into my accounting software because the two don't play together. And the information that comes in from this other software is not in the format that I need it to be in to import it into my software. And this actually may sound like a familiar scenario to some of you. So what I want to do is I want to shorten up that time that it takes me to reformat that, because it comes in, and as you're looking at this right now, you can see it comes in as a list and not as a table or a database where it's easy for me to import it. So I have to every month, or perhaps even every week, right? I have to go in, clean up all of this data. It takes me an hour to do. You can see there are a lot of names here, or it could be sales that you have to import, whatever it is. But it comes in this format every month, and so now I have to take it and I have to put name, company, business address, city, and all of that. And then I have to be able to move all of these underneath the name, and then everyone underneath the company. And you can see that that might take quite a bit of time. And there are things that I can do. There's formulas that I can use to help me shorten that up, for sure. But I can actually take all of those things that I do, and I can incorporate that into recording a macro. And then in this case, I actually have a button here that I've created on my sheet to do all of that, to run that macro and do it for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and click here to run that macro so that we can see kind of the power of what's behind there and some of the things that we can do with that. So there it is. So that was probably, what, 20 seconds? Definitely less time than maybe a half hour or an hour or whatever it would have taken me to restore this list. So really nice. Now I can take this, I can import it into my application. So that's just to kind of give you an idea of the power behind it and what it can be done. All right, so we talked a little bit about the shortcuts that are available, and I wanted to just switch back here for a minute and talk about that. Now, the one that I ended up using was Control-D, and I actually don't have this Excel workbook out there for you to download, but if you want it, please do let me know and I'll send it along. I couldn't post it in there, I couldn't upload it because it has macros in it and it won't allow that. So if you do want this sample file, let me know and we'll get it sent off to you. But in here, this gives us the list of shortcuts that are in use for Excel already. So these are the ones that are there by default. So you can see that when I use the Control-D, I actually took over this keyboard combination that's used to do a fill down. So if I wanted to fill information down, that's one of the things that I could do, Control-D to do that. If that's something that I use and I want that functionality to be there, then I'm going to want to choose a different shortcut combination. So the only ones that are open with Control are the J and the M. The rest of them already have tasks that are associated with that. And again, so if you use that, or if it's one that you don't use often, you could certainly use it for a macro if you wanted to. The other one, Control-Shift and a letter, is a lot more open. There's a lot more slots for that we could choose. So if I did a Control-Shift and a D, you can see that that would have been just fine. So the way that I can change that if I need to is by going up to the View tab, and then I can go to Macros. Now I can click on it, or I can click on the drop down and say View Macros. And that's going to bring me up to this macro dialog box where I can see the macros that I have available in the workbooks that I have open. So the one that I created was the double underline, you see there. And this one, if I go down and click on Options, okay, I can see that here is my Control-D. So if I wanted to change that to something else, let's say I wanted it to be a Shift-D, I could add my shift in there in D and then save it, say OK, and then I will just cancel out of there. So now if I wanted to use that macro, I would do Control-Shift and D. So if you need to make a change there, it is possible and you can do it from there. Just want to make sure that you're aware of that. All right, so let's take a look at what is it that happens behind the scenes here in these macros. And I don't want to spend a ton of time in the VBA window, but I do want to show you how you can get there. And as you get more comfortable with macros, you may actually find yourself in that window. One of the ways to bring that up quickly is to do Alt and F11. And you'll see that that brings up at the top, Visual Basic for Applications, or VBA. And this is the code that actually runs behind the macro. So right now, I'm looking at a certain piece of code, and this is actually the one that I was using to change that list into a table. So over here on this side, you can see I have a couple of different files that are open. One of them is the example one, And you can see that the file extension on it is a little bit different. Instead of an XLSX, it has an M at the end, and that stands for macro. So it's very easy to be able to tell from a file extension whether an Excel file has a macro in it or not. This other one that I have open is the one that I was just showing you, and that's the one where I have the examples in automating tasks with Excel macros. And so this has a few different sheets in it, and we can see. And I'm just going to expand this modules section right here. And the modules are actually the macros that run. So if I click on module 1, you'll see that it shows up down here in the properties window, but I still have this code content over here. But if I double click it now, you'll see that it does in fact start showing me, here is the add new month, right? So this is the macro that I'm looking at for module 1. If I want to see the code for module 2, I simply double click on that and you'll see. So here is my double underline macro, and here is the description that I had put in there, and there's my keyboard shortcut. And so here is the code that is actually in the background of that. Now you may look at this and say, forget it, I'm never going in here, and that's totally fine. But there may be certain times where you come in and you might see something where you say, wow, this is kind of a toggle, or you know, maybe it's once the font is selected, the name, here's the font name, I could actually change this font name to a different font if I wanted to right from here. Or I could change the size. Maybe I want it to be 12, and I could change that right from there as well. So you can actually make adjustments to your code in here, and the more you work with it, if you create a macro and then you just go in and look at the code that's in there, it kind of helps you to understand it because you just ran through it. As you start looking at these things, you may recognize, oh, that's what that means when I did this certain thing. So it's helpful to know if it's something that you think that you might use. You can also do other things inside this window, like being able to share code or to copy code to others. So also just want to mention before we get into that, that sometimes when you open up this window, depending on how many files you have open, have you used it before and set it up, but I want to make sure that you know if you open it up and it doesn't look just like this, or you're missing part of it, that these bars do adjust just like in other applications from Office. So you can expand these out, and if something is missing, you can always go up to the View tab and choose Code. That's what's over here on the right-hand side. That's the Code window. And Project Explorer, that's this part on the top. And then the Properties window, that's down here. So you can always get back to those if necessary. All right. So in this window, another thing that we can do is we can actually take a look at our personal macro workbook. And you'll see that I don't have one of those here, and that's because it doesn't get created until you save your first macro to it. So I'm going to go toggle out of this window and go create a macro and save it into the personal workbook so that we can take a look at what that is. All right. So again, just to toggle back, I can do Alt and F11 again, or if I want to close the window out completely, I can use the X up in the corner. So either way, I'm back now to my Excel window, and I am looking at my shortcut list, and I'm just going to go over to the Names sheet tab, and from here, what I'm looking at is some names that I have, some plain names, and you can see that they're all in caps, And what I want to do is I want them to be in proper case. And the other thing that I noticed was that some of this needs to be cleaned up because there's spaces in here. So what I have in this formula is proper, which puts it in the proper case, and also I have trim there, so it's just trimming off those extra spaces. But the important part isn't really so much what the formula is doing as what I want to do with this afterwards, which is to, I want to be able to have the values. So I'd like this to go away now that I have this formula in here. This is the text that I really want to be displayed in my worksheet. And what I'm going to do to replace that is to select that, and then I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste just the values in that section. So it will change it from being a formula into just being values, more like this one is. Because I can't get rid of this column until I have the values of this one. And so this may be one of those things that, you know, it could be, you know, it doesn't take long to do, but again, I'm saving clicks, so it may be a few clicks to do that, where if I create a button to be able to do that, I can, or use a shortcut, keystroke, I can do it really quickly. So here I'm going to take this section, and I am going to start recording my macro. And you see that I'm selecting the section that I want to apply the formatting or the function, whatever it is that I'm doing. I'm selecting my text first, and the reason that I'm doing that is because I want to be able to use this macro on whatever text I select. So if I waited to select the text until after I started recording the macro, then it would select B2 to B37 every time I ran the macro, so it would only run on that section. So that's not what I want. I want it to be able to run it on whatever sections I want, whatever cells I want. So I select that first so that that's not part of my macro. Now I'm going to come down and I'm going to click on record, and that's going to start my macro. And this one I'm just going to call replace underscore with underscore values. Or I could say replace formulas with values, right? So now I'm going to skip my key cut or my shortcut for this time, but I am going to choose personal macro workbook so I can see what that is there. I can also add a description if I wanted to. I'm going to skip that for now and say okay. So now I'm recording that macro, and what I want to do is I want to copy this. So I'm going to go back to my home tab, and I'm going to choose copy. And now I'm going to select, you can see I still have this area all selected. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to say paste values. And that's it. The last thing I want to do is, because I don't want to leave this marquee around it, I want to actually make it part of my macro that gets removed. So I'm going to hit my escape key to stop that. Okay? And now I'm going to go ahead and stop my macro recording. And let's test it out. So I'm going to, again, let's see if I can just go back. There we go. All right. So now I'm back to having my formula in here. Okay. So let's try that macro and see how that works. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to select my text, and I am going to go up to view, and I'm going to click on macro, and from here I can see that you guys see it? Let's choose the personal one, and there we go. Replace with values, and I can run it from here. So not quite as convenient as having a shortcut key, but there are other things that we can do with that too that we'll take a look at in a little bit. So there's my macro. It ran. It's beautiful. Now I can go ahead and delete this, and I'm all set. If there were other ones that I wanted to be able to do that with, so let's say I have another one here, and I want to be able to just replace this with the same way. So I'm going to come down, and I'm going to select this text or these cells, and I'm going to go back to view, and I'm going to go ahead and run this again. And now you can see here that I actually have the values instead of the formulas like it does in the rest of it. Okay. So that's an example of how I can put that in my personal workbook. But the great thing about that is that when it's in my personal workbook, now I can use that for any other ones, any other workbooks that I want to. So unlike the one that we saved that was, let me just pop that open again. So unlike the one that we saved that was just within the workbook double underline, I can only use double underline for this workbook when it's open. For my personal workbook, that gives me the opportunity to use that whenever, because this always gets opened when Excel opens now that I have it created. So let's switch back over to our VBA window and take a look at it from there. So again, Alt and F11 to open that. And now you can see in here, I actually have my personal MacBook, or sorry, MacBook. I have my personal macro workbook that I can go ahead and open up the module. I'm going to double click on that so we can see this is replaced with values. So there is that macro to tell me exactly what that code is doing. Okay. So the cool thing about this is that you can, if you have created other macros in workbooks, and let's say it's something that you thought, oh, I'll probably just use it on this one, or something that you created a while ago, and you want to be able to use it for really any workbook that you're working on, you can always copy and paste this code in. So let's say I have some code here from this one. So I actually, let's pick the double underline one, right? So I can take this, select this all, and it always starts with a sub and ends with end sub. So I can take this, I can copy it, and now if I want to go ahead and paste that in, I'm just going to double click on module 1, so it's showing me that. And here is my space, so I'm going to go ahead and just paste that in. And now you can see that I actually have that in there as one of my macros that's available for me. So definitely, you can definitely move these around within that. So very nice to be able to have that feature. The other thing that we can do with it is share that out. So we can come up to the File menu, and I can actually export that macro. And let's say this is the one that I really want to do, or maybe this whole section. I can come in, do export file. It's going to export that module as a BAS or a basic file. And you can see that I'm going to put that, let's put that on my desktop so I can get to it really quickly. And now I want to be able to pull that into a different worksheet. So I'm going to select a different workbook, and I'm going to go into File, Import. I'm going to go out to my desktop. I'm going to find that module 1, and I'm going to open it. And you can see it actually called it module 11. And if I double click on that, there it is, replaced with macros and my double underline. So I just want to let you know that there are ways that you can move these around from within that VBA window. And there are ways that you can share that with others. another nice feature here is that if you did happen to adjust the code over time or make changes to it, that you might actually want to change some of what this description is. And you can do that from here. As you see the single quote there, that tells me that this is just a comment. And the comments are just information about the macro, about the code, and it's not anything that actually runs. So this is the information here. And this line is actually just a comment. It's a blank line. I could delete that if I wanted to. But I could also change this to be, I can add, you know, a 2 to it if I needed to change it. Or if I wanted to change the description, I could do that as well. You can also use the comment to comment out a section of the code just to see if you want to try something different. That you wouldn't have to actually delete it, but you could, what they call, comment it out. So I could change this to, if I put a quote there, you'll notice that now it turns green, so that lets me know that it's just a comment and it's not actually code that's going to run. So you know you can always make a backup of your, if you wanted to play with one, you could always make a copy of it and play with the copy as you're working through it. So again, if this is something that you just don't want to get into, that's great, but it's there if you do want to experiment a little bit more. All right, so one thing that we need to talk about, because it wouldn't be me if I didn't, is the security around all of this great stuff. So you see it has all of this great capability, and the one that we looked at in the list, creating that into a table. There's lots of other things that can be done with it. So you can take it and actually we've created one where it will take information from a certain application, import that, and populate about 7 or 8 different worksheets and create that into a report format and print it out in Excel. So there's tons of possibility with this. Kind of the sky's the limit. So with that, though, with all of that power comes great responsibility. And so I just want to make sure that that we look at what the security is around this. And having macro enable or having code in files is one of the big ways that that those hackers or scammers or social engineering criminals out there will try to take advantage. And this is something that we see come in emails all the time. There'll be an attachment in there. The whole social engineering piece of that email is to get you to open that file attachment. And when you open it, then it runs the code. Sometimes they will even try to get you to enable the code if you have macros disabled. So just closing that out so we can kind of go back to the screen here. And what I want to show you is what happens when you open a file that is from an outside source. So I'm going to go ahead and click open. I'm just going to click on this one, and hopefully we'll see that there. All right, so it looks like this is one that I've used before and I've already enabled it. Let me see if I can find one that I haven't. Try that one. Yeah, so again, but what you will see that will show up here is a yellow bar that will say enable content. And you've probably seen that in other ones that you've used. And actually, if you get this macro workbook from me, you'll see that there as well. So there'll be a yellow bar that shows up here, and it will have a little gray button that says enable content. And what you're doing when you click enable content is you are saying it's okay to enable the code in this to run. So that's why it's so important to make sure that you know that what you are using or what you're opening is coming from a trusted source. So make sure you never open it from an email if it comes from someone, even someone that you know. I wouldn't do it without verifying that with that person by placing a phone call to them saying, you know, did you send this to me and where did you get it? And just really be careful because it can, you know, potentially steal information on your computer. So we want to be careful with that. Another thing that you can do to kind of make sure that you're protected is check on what the settings are for security. So if I go to File Options, this is a long path, but it is in your file that you've got there. So you can go into File Options, Trust Center settings, and then look at the macro settings. And by default, this is set up with Disable All Macros with Notifications. So that's what happens when you see that yellow bar and it says Enable Content. It's telling you that it has macros in it, and it's saying, hey, it's got it, do you want to allow it? So that's what that one's about. The top one, Disable All Macros Without Notification, that one is just going to not let it run, and it's not going to have a pop-up that tells you. Disable macros except digitally signed ones, those are ones that are not going to be just like from your coworker or someone that you work with in your field. This is going to be one that's got to be digitally signed, and that's the only way that it's going to allow that. And then the last one, I would say never put this on here. It's very dangerous. This would allow any code to run, so you definitely don't want it to be that. All right. And so that's kind of some of the security around that. So again, there's tons of code out there on the internet, and there's some really talented, great, smart people that put out this code to share, and it's wonderful. But there's also, you know, criminals out there who are just trying to scam you. So I would say if you don't, and when you look at the code, if you don't understand what it is, don't use it. But certainly able to create macros yourself and to be able to share that with others that you work with, totally fine and really, really helpful. All right, so how do you actually save a file with a macro? So I'm going to open up a new file, and I'm actually going to come over here and just copy some of this and paste it into that new file, just so I have something there to work with. And let's say my macro in this is going to be, I just want to format this. Okay, so I'm going to start a macro here. Go to View, Macro. Let's record macro. And I'm just going to leave this as macro 3, personal, that's fine. And I'll say OK. And what I'm going to run here is, I'm just going to change the color in the background, and I'm going to make it bold. And that's all my macro is going to do. Now I'm going to go down here and say stop. Okay. So now I have this macro. I want to save my file. Been working on this for a while. So I'm going to go File, Save As. So if I click Save from here, and I'm just going to save that out to my documents as book 1, that's fine. Okay, did it actually just save that? So let me see what I did there. All right, so View, Macro. Yeah, so, okay. I recorded it in my personal one, which is why it didn't do that. But if I had, and in fact, let me just re-record. And I'll just do another one and not save it there, but save it in this workbook. Sorry about that, guys. So here I'm going to go ahead and just do that again. All right, so there's my macro. So now I'm going to go File, Save, and it's going to tell me the following features can't be saved in a macro-free workbook. So what this is telling me is that when I save a workbook, it's usually saved as an XLSX. And if I do that here, I can't save the macro. I could save the workbook, but the macro I couldn't save. So I don't want to do that. But what I do want to do is go back and select Save as Type and choose Macro-Enabled Workbook, and that's going to allow me to save it. And then I can go ahead and click Save. And you'll actually see now up here on the top that it has that M for macro. Okay. So I just wanted to go over that because as you come up with all these brilliant ideas, I want you to be able to save them and use them. So that is saving it. There is another thing that is pretty cool that we haven't talked about, and that's the Developer tab. So I have mine enabled already. It's something that you have to enable. It's not by default. So if I right-click anywhere here in the ribbon and I choose Customize Ribbon, you'll see that over here in the tab, it's actually whited out, but let me choose another one. So you can see mine is checked. If you want to be able to use the Developer tab, you just want to come in and check it. And what that's going to give you is a way to switch to your VBA window. You can see it has the tip there, Alt and F11. So it just allows me to switch very quickly to that view, okay? And then back again. So I can use that. I also have my macros here. I have stop recording. I have start recording. So I can do all that right from here. I also have the macro security, which is a really quick way to get to that area where we're going in the trust center. All right. And there is another option here that I have to actually insert a button. And I want to show you that because it's another way that you can run a macro. And it's actually kind of cool. So let's see, not you. I've got a couple different ones open here, so let's see. All right, so let's take a look at this, for example. This may be something that I do on a regular basis where I'm adding the next month, and I'm actually missing December or November, but that's all right. We'll roll with it. But in this file, let's say one of the things that I do is I always come in and I record the new month. And what that requires me to do is come in, I need to delete the content that's in here, I need to move this section down, I need to then create the next month here, and now I need to copy this, paste it in here, and now I need to, well, I also want to be able to just copy that formatting over. And there it is. And the last thing is I need to make sure that that is included in the sum. So I got to do that. And okay. So it didn't really take me all that long to do that because I've done it 100 times, let's say. But there definitely is a quicker way. And if you have somebody that you work with who also does maybe the same thing, it might be helpful to have a button there to use. So there's a couple of different things that we can do. One is to use a shape. So we can come in and we can say, okay, here's a shape. And I want to use, let's use an oval. And so now I can draw that oval shape there. And now that I have that, I want to just start typing on it. So I'm going to click on it and start typing. Click here to add new month. All right. So maybe I need to make my text a little smaller or my oval a little bigger. And you can see, I mean, you can format that however it makes sense to you. So that's great. So what I want to do, though, is I'm going to go ahead and go through this routine again, but this time I'm going to record it as a macro. So here I'm going to start my macro, and let's just make this a different amount just so that it's really easy to see the change. So this time I'm going to make it 55,000, and let's go ahead and record that macro. Yeah, we'll leave it 5. We'll say this workbook, all that stuff. All right. So Now I'm recording. So again, I'm going to come here. I'm going to delete that out of here. I'm going to take this. I'm going to move it down. All right. Now I'm going to add my next month. And I'm going to copy this from here into here. And now I just want to copy this formatting over. And the last piece is making sure that this is included. All right, voila, I'm done. Stop recording, okay? And now I'm going to add that to this button. So I'm going to make it so I come in, I click this, and it's done. So to do that, I'm going to right-click on it, and I'm going to assign macro. And then from here, I can choose, it's in this workbook, and help me, I think it was macro 5. All right, so I'm going to select that, and now that macro is assigned to that button. So let's change this amount again to, let's make it 75 so we can see what happens here. And I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and there it is, that quick. Okay, so, and you can see it went through all those steps, and I'm done. So that's kind of the power behind macros. I hope that you found some value in this, and that it's been helpful. Again, you know, multiple ways that you can run these. The other thing from the developer tab is being able to actually insert a button. Same idea, but go to insert button, and you can create the button right from there. Choose the macro that you want to use, and there it is. And then I can change my text to whatever I want to say for instructions. Again, I can just go ahead and click that to run that macro, and there it is. All right. I have actually one more poll that I would like to run. Bill, do you have any questions before I do that?
Nope, we do not have any questions.
Okay. So if you're thinking of something and you want to shout that out, please do go ahead and type that in the question box, and we'll take a look and see if we can answer it for you. And while we're doing that, I'm going to throw out the other poll for you. So this one is, I'd like to learn about creating electronic forms. This is something that considering running a TechByte on, and just want to see what the interest in this would be, if anybody has interest in learning about how to create electronic forms. Wait a couple more seconds for anyone else to get their votes in on that. All right. And we'll go ahead and close that poll. I'm thinking of doing it with Acrobat, but if you have other ideas, we're going to have a survey at the end where you can let me know, if you're thinking of something different like Excel or something like that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share that out. So looks like more than half of you are interested in that. So again, would love to hear. We have a survey that's going to come up right after the webinar, and really appreciate it if you would fill that out. And then also in the comments section, if you want to specify yes with Acrobat or some other type of application maybe that you're considering, or anything else that you would like to get a TechByte on, please do let me know in that survey. We do look at those and really take those very seriously. So appreciate all of your time. Hope you found this valuable. And Bill, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, again, thanks everyone for attending. Again, we'll keep you updated on our next TechByte. We haven't decided on an exact date. It'll be this fall, and might be electronic forms, but we'll keep you appraised of all that going forward. Thanks a lot. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time.